real-world protests and their virtual twits side by side. I found it mind-blowing to see how these virtual protests are shaping up. The ban of Animal Crossing in China is a testament to the power of these in-game protests, making me wonder, is in-game activism the future of activism? It's definitely a growing trend, and I'm really curious about who and what exactly is driving this trend. For now, it seems mostly young people, but why? What's pulling them into these virtual spaces to protest? But the bigger question is, will game developers keep letting this happen or hit the brakes to avoid bans? But before we answer all these questions, guess what happened while I was writing the script for this video? Speaking of activism, wow. Wow, indeed. Talking about timing, huh? So seeing this happen all in real time really made me wonder, when did virtual worlds started to reflect real-life protests? Well, let's rewind a bit and see where it all started. Once upon a time, one of the first in-game protests emerged with EVE Online, where players usually battle in space, but this time they were fighting against microtransaction policies with pay-to-win items introduced by the game's maker. It riled the player base up so much they organized a vast in-game protest at JITA, EVE's trade hub, with 1,000 pilots firing upon the trade station. It was of such an unprecedented scale that these moments became known as EVE Online Summer of Rage. However, it was only in 2016 when a real-world event started to become a protest in games, when youngsters who couldn't vote in the real world made their voices heard in Disney's game Club Penguin, protesting against none other but Donald Trump's election victory. Club Penguin, now shut down for other reasons, used to be a platform for kids where you could create little penguins walking around and meeting friends. With the anti-Trump protests, lots of penguins started to march around with speech bubbles saying, "Not my president, my body, my choice, not with him," except, well, there's always a lonely penguin standing out of the crowd, eh? Then December 2019, Hong Kong's struggle for democracy spills into GTA 5. Via VPN servers, Hong Kong players customized their avatars to resemble protesters and proceeded to toss petrol bombs, vandalize train stations, and attack police in China's GTA 5. Mainland players were quick to respond, repelling the Hong Kong insurgents by reskinning their avatars into riot police. And then the pandemic hits. The streets are empty, and the only world where people can meet with each other is in the virtual world. And this is when in-game protests really started to escalate. There were 6 really notable protests. March 2022, in Minecraft, players built a virtual library called Uncensored Library, containing banned writings from all around the globe so that information can slip past government censors. April 10, 2020, back to Hong Kong. Not in GTA, but in Animal Crossing. Joshua Wong, leader of the Hong Kong youth activist group, saw a group of avatars on an island whacking a picture of Hong Kong chief executive Carrie Lam with fishing nets and a flag that read, "Free Hong Kong, Revolution Now." Instead of a revolution, though, all it got was a banned game altogether. So much for fishing for freedom. June 2020, and it's all about Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter!
From Habbo to Minecraft to Toontown and The Sims, they all become stages for solidarity and protests. August 2020, the free Fortnite event happens. Remember that one? Taking a jab at Apple's App Store monopoly. Gamers and developers side by side in a fight for digital rights. 2021 had its share of drama too. World of Warcraft players staged a sit-in in the city of Erebus, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, against Activision Blizzard's sexual harassment culture towards female employees. And when Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, Guild Wars 2 and The Elder Scrolls Online became platforms for peace marches. Lastly, but definitely not least, this. In Roblox, it's very clear the gaming world isn't just about escapism anymore, but about a reflection or a reaction to real-life events. But did these in-game protests really achieve something? Well, in the case with EVE Online Summer of Rage, CCP, the game's developer, not the Chinese Communist Party, did change things up a bit, including a new development strategy, improved communication with players, and focusing on the core gameplay rather than pay-to-win goods in their microtransaction store. Club Penguin, well, they didn't really directly achieve their desired political outcome, but the clips went viral. and sent message from generation of future voters. And the protests in GTA 5, well, even though it didn't really get them anywhere other than mainland players winning, as they had just way more players on their side, it did inspire some Hong Kong developers to create their own virtual reality game called Liberate Hong Kong to experience the protests without leaving their homes. And in the case with Minecraft's uncensored library, well, it went viral and even received an award, the Peabody Award in 2022, described as a monument to press freedom and an innovative backdoor to censored content. So despite their impact, these in-game protests got less attention and less impact than their real-life counterparts, raising the question, why the rise in popularity, especially among kids? Well, there are 5 potential advantages. First off, gaming just exploded during the pandemic, as we all know. Stuck at home, everyone turned to games like Roblox, now with 70 million daily users, mostly under 16. It's not just for play dates and parties anymore, but a massive platform for expressing solidarity anonymously. And that's the second advantage of in-game protests. With anonymity, there's just way less fear of backlash. And thirdly, everybody can partake regardless of age. Especially young kids who are digital natives feel at home in these virtual worlds and tend to voice their opinions freely, minus the physical risk of real-world activism. Fourth advantage, it's cost-effective. And number 5, the global reach. And lastly, number 6, gaming is just less censored than social media protests, for example. So really great for building communities and rallying people up. As a 15-year-old Roblox player said, I heard about the protest through TikTok and decided to join the game to show my support. It might be silly, but it's the intentions that count. Or we're just children of the internet. It's our tool to navigate and understand the world. But how do such games, originally designed for entertainment and escapism, facilitate such activism? Well, if you watched my other videos, you know I'm a big fan of theories and frameworks. They just kickstart my understanding of things. And while I was doing my research, I stumbled upon 2 really interesting theories. Cute cat theory. Okay. And the affordance theory. Well, the cute cat theory simply states that platforms originally designed for mundane activities, such as sharing cute cat pictures, turn out to be great for hosting protests because they're harder to censor. The affordance theory, coined by this guy, is all about how our surroundings get used for different things, based not on their intended design, but on how we perceive them and on what we can creatively do with them. Like a skateboard, for example. It's not just for riding. It could afford as a doorknob, a shelf, or a toilet paper holder. In gaming, this means that the same features, so the affordances, that make a game fun are the same features used for activism. And these affordances can mean different things to different players at a different time. For one person, the game is just for fun. For another, it's a tool for change. Just like the mechanics in a game afford to do quests, they also afford to stage protests. In this slide, the key affordances driving in-game protests are the strong community, interactive environments, modding capabilities, and the ease of sharing content. And as you can imagine, using games for political activities doesn't rub everybody the right way. As they become more and more popular, there's also more and more backlash. Some gamers just don't want to see this real-life stuff in their games.
Wait a minute. Dude, this happens every time I join a Minecraft game. I'll be like, what do you guys think of BLM? And the chat's just like, F that shit.
Yep, exactly that. Some say games just really need to stay apolitical for the sake of escapism and entertainment. Just like others object to political activities in public events, such as football or the Grammys. And others counter-argue with, well, you can't really escape real-life issues in games anyways because they have these stereotypes built into these games already by biased developers and player discrimination and harassment. Meaning, while games can be an escape, they really never shield you from real-life societal issues anyways. And if more gamers push for apolitical games, it might impact sales. But actually, there are a lot of developers who support in-game activism publicly. In the case of the Black Lives Matter movement in The Sims own Twitter account supported the rally by retweeting a post an activist made about the march, even releasing a pack update of 100 new skin tones to be more reflective of the people who play. And when Toontown's players used the game to voice support for Black Lives Matter, the developers responded with a clear message on X with, "You have a voice in our game." They even updated updated the chat whitelist to allow the words Black Lives Matter and other supportive phrases. And when World of Warcraft members organized a sit-in in that city to protest the unethical treatment of employees at Activision Blizzard, the company responded on X by sharing an email sent by the company's president addressing the completely unacceptable behavior. And besides the sit-in, employees staged a walkout, demanding better working conditions free from harassment. Let's see if Microsoft can make Activision Blizzard great again. Anyways, there are so many more examples which just didn't fit into this video, but if you want to read my full-fledged essay, you can go to Substack, link in the description below. In any case, it's a very challenging balancing act for game makers to keep games as platforms for entertainment while keeping them also as platforms for expression. I think the stance of game developers just varies from in-game protest to in-game protest. Some, like the Sims creators, openly support it, while others might find themselves in murky waters if they were to support it openly. So, what does the future hold at the intersection of gaming and activism? Well, there is a chance that we might witness yet another cultural shift in how digital protests are seen just as legitimate and as impactful as their physical counterparts. Take Tyria Pride and Black Lives Matter in Minecraft, for instance. These events rewarded players who donated to charity with in-game items like weapons, armor, or banners. And this charity aspect in games could further legitimize in-game protests. And we might see more and more simulators emerging designed for in-game protests. Liberty Hong Kong, as mentioned, is such a simulation game. Or Revolution of Our Times, a Hong Kong protest role-playing game. But that one got suspended from Google Play Store. But as the cute cat theory suggests, such games will remain less effective as they can be censored. And that's why we might see overall stricter moderation policies by game developers who are keen on keeping their games apolitical. And on the regulatory front, we might see new guidelines to balance freedom of expression with community standards. But you know what? Personally, I think it's better when we gamers keep using these games for our own protests rather than politicians using the same games for their agendas and campaigns. Take this lady, for instance, visiting Animal Crossing to leave a note on someone's board, or playing Among Us.
Really hope that I don't get imposter first.
A few minutes later.
Is there a way to mute myself?
Yes.
Ironically, Among Us, the game centered around lies and deception. So it's one thing to use games as a platform for expression, and it's another thing to use games as a stage for political theater. So there must be a sweet spot. As the affordance theory suggests, as long as games can be used for protests, they will be used for protests, whether we like it or not. So I think there definitely will be more and more such in-game protests. But again, shaping these spaces is, as always, a collective effort. Players, creators, communities, we all need to work on this together, communicate openly, and help developers find that sweet spot between freedom and responsibility. Games have always been more than just entertainment. As legendary game designer Shigeru Miyamoto once said, "Video games are bad for you?" That's what they said about rock and roll. So let's keep rockin'. Sorry, I needed to make that pun. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, we can all change the world together, one game at a time.